1977. A drug lord makes the United States an offer. Pay me $100 million or I'll poison your country. His name is Khun Sa. And he's not bluffing. At his peak, he controls more heroin than any human being in history. 40% of the product on American streets comes from his jungle labs. 1 in 4 US overdoses traces back to his supply. Emergency rooms from New York to Los Angeles overflow with his poison. But here's what makes this worse. The CIA helped create him. Their covert proxies gave him his first weapons, and their training camps taught him how to kill. Now their monster is holding America hostage. Washington responds with everything: a $2 million bounty, a federal indictment, and the largest multinational drug sting ever attempted. They spend 2 decades trying to destroy him, but he buries them all. Dies in 2007 in a villa with his fortune surrounded by family. Never spends a single day in an American cell. How did a jungle warlord beat a superpower? And what made him completely untouchable? Bandit Prince. The Golden Triangle, 1950, where Burma, Laos, and Thailand collide in a tangle of jungle-covered mountains. There are no laws, only power. And in 1950, power belongs to the Khua men. These are the remnants of Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist Chinese army. Over 12,000 soldiers pushed into these lawless highlands after Mao's communists seized China in 1949. They're stranded, stateless, desperate, and secretly funded by the CIA. Washington sees them as a weapon against communist China guerrillas who can harass Mao's regime from the south. The CIA supplies them with weapons, gold, and military advisors. What Washington doesn't see is a half-shorn, half-Chinese teenager named Zhang Qifu, watching from the edge of every training session, memorizing everything. How to strip and reassemble a rifle blindfolded, how to set an ambush in a dense jungle, how to read terrain for tactical advantage, and even how to turn violence into profit and profit into power. The CIA is training their future nightmare, and they have no idea. Every technique their proxies teach will eventually be used against American interests on a scale no one can imagine. By his early 20s, Zhang Chief commands his own militia. Small, hungry, and dangerous, he starts with protection rackets, extorting opium farmers in remote Shabwa villages who have no police to call and no government that cares about them. But here's what separates him from every other jungle thug scrambling for scraps in the Golden Triangle. Zhang Qifu thinks in systems. He doesn't just want to steal opium, he wants to control the entire supply chain from the poppy fields to the refineries, to the smuggling routes to the foreign distributors. In 1963, he makes a deal that would define his entire career and change the trajectory of the global drug trade. The Burmese military needs someone to fight communist insurgents threatening the Chinese border. Zhang Qifu volunteers his militia. In exchange, the government gives him something priceless. Immunity. He can traffic as much opium as he wants with official protection. The Burmese army has just handed a future drug emperor his first license to operate. Within 2 years, his militia has better weapons than the Burmese military itself. He buys black market arms by the truckload, rifles, machine guns, mortars, and trains his fighters with the same discipline he learned watching those CIA-backed KMT soldiers. Locals whisper his name with fear, but Zhang Chief isn't satisfied with being a regional player. He wants the throne of the entire Golden Triangle drug trade. And, in the spring of 1967, he makes his move. Imagine 500 armed men marching through mountain passes, 300 mules in a line stretching half a mile, each animal carrying raw opium worth a fortune on international markets. Zhang Qifu is sending this caravan straight into territory controlled by the Kuomintang, the same forces who trained him, the same networks that have dominated the Triangle's drug trade for 15 years. He's not just competing, he's declaring war on his former masters. It's either brilliant or suicidal, maybe both. The convoy snakes through jungle trails for days, moving slowly to avoid detection. Guards scanning the terrain for ambush. Then, near the Laotian border at Von Quan, the jungle explodes. Gunfire from 3 directions simultaneously. The woman Tong have been waiting, and they're furious at the betrayal, but they're not alone. Laotian army units smell the prize too, and attack from another angle, hoping to seize the shipment for themselves. It's a 3-way slaughter for 16 tons of opium. Mules collapse in the crossfire. Men scream and fall. Then the Laotian Air Force arrives. Bombs fall from the sky, turning the jungle floor into a hellscape of fire and shrapnel. When the smoke clears, Jiang Changfu has lost everything. His entire shipment destroyed or seized. Scores of his men dead or scattered across the mountains. His reputation for invincibility shattered in a single afternoon. The 33-year-old warlord barely escapes with his life, fleeing into the jungle with a handful of survivors. Meanwhile, his enemies celebrate. The Kuomintang think they've eliminated a rival. The Burmese government decides Jiang Chifu has become more trouble than he's worth. In October 1969, Jiang Chifu steps off a plane at Heiho Airport for what he thinks is a routine trip. But he walks straight into a trap. Security forces swarm him before he can react. The charge is treason, flirting with rival rebel groups. He's 35 years old, shackled and thrown into a Mandalay prison cell. His empire is finished. The Jungle Prince will rot in darkness for the rest of his life. At least that's what everyone believes. But Jiang Chief is about to spend 5 years learning a philosophy that will transform him from a defeated warlord into the most dangerous drug lord in history. What happens to a man who loses everything and has nothing but time to think? And who's planning a kidnapping on the outside that will change everything? The resurrection, Mandalay prison, 5 years of concrete walls and silence. Most men break under that kind of isolation, but Jiang Chief evolves. He devours every book he can get his hands on, especially Sun Tzu's The Art of War. He writes down the principle that will guide every decision he makes for the next 30 years. In politics, there are no lifelong friends and no lifelong foes. They change according to gains and losses. He has no loyalty and no sentiment, no relationships that can't be sacrificed for advantage. Every alliance is temporary. Every friendship is a transaction waiting to be exploited. He enters prison as a warlord who made emotional decisions. He'll leave as something far more dangerous, a pure strategist who sees human beings as chess pieces to be moved and sacrificed. Outside the prison walls, his most loyal followers refuse to give up. They've been waiting, planning, and watching for an opportunity. In 1973, they execute the most audacious rescue operation in Burmese criminal history. They kidnap 2 Soviet doctors working at a hospital in rural Burma. The ransom demand isn't money, it's Jiang Chifu's freedom. The Burmese government faces an impossible choice: humiliate themselves internationally by releasing a convicted traitor, or let Soviet citizens die and face Moscow's fury during the height of Cold War tensions. They can't afford a diplomatic crisis with the USSR. In 1974, after 5 years behind bars, Jiang Chifu walks out of prison and immediately disappears across the Thai border. The Burmese government assumes he'll fade into obscurity, a broken man grateful just to survive. They're about to learn what happens when you cage a wolf for 5 years, sharpen his mind with military philosophy, and then set him free with a burning desire for revenge and power. Within 2 years, he rebuilds everything he lost and transforms himself entirely. He takes a new name, Khun Sa, meaning Prince Prosperous in Shah, but the name is just the beginning of his reinvention. He declares himself a freedom fighter for Shah independence, a revolutionary hero battling Burmese tyranny. It's a masterstroke of propaganda. The Shan people, an ethnic minority, neglected, oppressed, and forgotten by the central government in Rangoon, embrace him as their champion. They don't see the heroin refineries hidden in jungle clearings. They see the schools he builds, the clinics he funds, and the roads he constructs through their villages. Khun has discovered something powerful. Wrap your crimes in a flag. Convince people you're fighting for their freedom, and they will die for you. They will protect you, and they will hide you from your enemies. By 1976, he commands a reconstituted army called the Shan United Army. By 1977, he operates from a fortified base at Banhintaik in northern Thailand, complete with barracks, artillery positions, and anti-aircraft missiles. Thai generals look the other way because he's useful as a buffer against communist insurgents. The American-trained bandit has become an American-tolerated warlord. But Khun Sa isn't satisfied with regional dominance. He wants the world to know his name, and he's about to make an offer the United States will never forget. In 1977, he sends a message through intermediaries to Congressman Lester Wolf, chairman of the House Select Committee on Narcotics. The offer is deceptively simple. Pay $100 million and I'll sell you my entire opium stockpile directly. Invest in development for the Shan people, and I'll retire from the drug trade forever. It sounds almost reasonable until you realize what he's really saying. I control the largest heroin supply on Earth, and I can either take it off the market or flood your country with it. It's your choice. It's extortion disguised as negotiation. blackmail dressed up as diplomacy, and most importantly, a criminal holding a superpower hostage. Washington is forced to confront an impossible question. What do you do when a narco-terrorist offers to solve the problem he created for the right price? Some pragmatists in Congress are actually tempted. Could paying one man really eliminate a third of the world's heroin supply? But the White House refuses categorically. Paying criminals sets a precedent that would invite every drug lord on earth to try the same trick. They call it blackmail and publicly vow never to negotiate with narrow terrorists. Khun Sa receives the rejection in his jungle headquarters and smiles. He was counting on it. The offer was never really an offer, it was a threat. And now he has permission to execute it. If America won't pay, they'll suffer instead. What he's planning next will be called an industrial revolution of death. He's going to transform heroin production from a cottage industry into factory-scale manufacturing. And American cities will pay the price in blood. How do you industrialize death? And what happens when heroin production scales up by a factor of 10? The flood. The 1980s, Khun Sa doesn't just expand his operation, he revolutionizes the entire global heroin trade. He relocates his headquarters to Hong, deep inside Burma's Shan State, beyond the reach of Thai authorities who are finally facing American pressure to act. There in the jungle, he builds something the world has never seen. A functioning narco-state with its own government, its own economy, and its own industrial policy for producing death. By 1985, he forges an alliance of Shan warlords under his banner and creates the Mong Thai army, 18,000 regular soldiers, 5,000 trained reserves, and 8,000 village militia scattered across his territory. That's over 30,000 fighters armed with mortars, rockets, machine guns, and shoulder-launched surface-to-air missiles capable of downing helicopters and low-flying aircraft. For perspective, that's larger than the standing armies of many United Nations member states. He establishes schools, hospitals, tax collectors, even a puppet parliament called the Thai Revolutionary Council. Within his borders, Khun Sa is not a drug lord, he's a head of state. But the real weapon isn't his soldiers, it's his chemists. Dozens of heroin laboratories operate around the clock throughout his territory, refining raw opium into number 4, heroin at 90% purity. Before Khun Sa, street heroin in American cities was typically cut to 3 to 5% purity by the time it reached users. His product is up to 20 times stronger, and he's producing it at industrial scale. Thousands of kilograms pouring out of jungle refineries every month. Western drug enforcement officials call it an industrial revolution of death, and they're not exaggerating. The numbers tell the story in bodies. In the mid-1970s, Southeast Asian heroin was a minor player in the American drug market. Perhaps 5% of the supply reaching US streets. Under Khun Sa's reign, the Golden Triangle's opium output explodes to over 2,500 tons annually, more than half the entire global supply. By 1989, Golden Triangle heroin accounts for 80% of the product on New York City streets, and Khun personally controls nearly half of that flood. The DEA estimates he's responsible for 40% of all heroin entering the United States. Think about what that means. 4 out of every 10 heroin overdoses in America trace back to one man's jungle laboratories. He's killing more Americans annually than some wars and getting rich doing it. At home in Shan State, Khun Sa maintains his double identity with careful precision. When foreign journalists make the dangerous trek through mountains to interview him, he offers smooth justifications. Westerners are going to use drugs regardless. He argues, I'm merely a businessman meeting demand. Besides, he says with his hand over his heart, every dollar funds the Sha struggle for self-determination. It's a masterful moral dodge. Many Sha villagers buy the narrative completely. To them, Khun Sa is the only leader who invests in their communities. He builds roads where the government builds nothing. He provides security where the government provides only neglect, compared to the distant Ya in Rangoon, which offers nothing but airstrikes and broken promises. The opium warlord seems benevolent. Of course, the Burmese military sees things differently. Throughout the 1980s, their forces clash sporadically with Khun Sa's army, but never seriously, never enough to threaten him. Because many high-ranking Burmese officers are secretly on his payroll, profiting handsomely from the trade they publicly condemn. The corruption runs so deep that Khun Sa's real protection isn't his missiles, it's his bribes. But here's what makes Sa different from every drug lord before or since. He wants the world to know exactly who he is and what he's doing. In 1988, with Ronald Reagan declaring a war on drugs from the White House lawn, Khun Sa declares war right back on camera. He invites international journalists to his headquarters and gives a press conference that stuns the world. With cameras rolling, the 54-year-old warlord looks directly into the lens, repeats his $100 million buyout offer, and then taunts the DEA directly. "Why not use a bandit to catch a bandit?" he asks, smiling. He's not hiding, he's advertising. He's daring the most powerful nation on earth to stop him. The United States responds by placing a $2 million bounty on his head. That same year, Thai police and DEA agents intercept one of his shipments, 2,400 kilograms of pure heroin, en route to New York City. The street value of that is hundreds of millions of dollars, enough doses to supply hundreds of thousands of addicts. It's one of the largest drug busts in history, and Khun Sa doesn't even flinch. Losing 2.4 tons of product is a rounding error when you control half the world's supply. The US government tries direct military pressure too. In 1982, they persuade Thailand to assault Khun Sa's base at Ban Hien Taik. Over 1,000 Thai soldiers, backed by helicopters and fighter jets, spend 4 days destroying his compound in fierce jungle combat. Buildings burn, ammunition stockpiles explode, and bodies litter the perimeter. But Khun Sa himself, gone. Vanished across the Burmese border hours before the final push. Another legendary escape. Within a year, he's rebuilt. Bigger, stronger, more fortified than before. Every time they knock him down, he absorbs the blow and grows larger. By the mid-1980s, he controls 150 miles of the Thai-Burma border. In 1989, a federal grand jury in New York indicts him on heroin trafficking charges. He responds by giving another interview, calling American leaders hypocrites. The world's most wanted drug trafficker is hosting press conferences in the jungle while American emergency rooms overflow with his poison. How long can this possibly last? What finally breaks an empire that has survived everything thrown at it? And why does the ending of this story make absolutely no sense? The trap? The early 1990s bring enemies that Sa can't buy, threaten, or outrun. The Wa militia, an ethnic group that has been rivals of the Shah for generations, rises to challenge his supremacy. But these aren't ordinary competitors. The Wa are backed covertly by the Burmese military junta, which has finally decided that Khun Sa has become more trouble than he's worth. Wa fighters know the jungle terrain as well as Khun Sa's own men. They're disciplined, ruthless, and they're playing for the ultimate prize. Control of the entire Golden Triangle heroin trade. Unlike DEA agents or Thai soldiers who can be evaded and outlasted, the W aren't going home. They're fighting for territory they intend to keep forever. Simultaneously, the DEA launches Operation Tiger Trap, the largest multinational drug sting ever attempted against a single target. Working with Thai police, they systematically identify and dismantle Khun Sa's distribution network piece by piece. His brokers in Bangkok arrested, his shipping contacts in Singapore extradited, his money launderers in Hong Kong getting their accounts frozen. In 1994 alone, 11 of his top lieutenants are captured in a single coordinated sweep across Thailand. His smuggling routes into the country are sealed shut for the first time in 20 years. His allies within the Shaw nationalist movement begin defecting, publicly accusing him of betraying their cause for personal wealth. The freedom fighter mask is cracking. For the first time in 30 years, Khun Sa is losing on multiple fronts simultaneously, militarily, logistically, and politically. By 1995, he's trapped in a shrinking territory with enemies pressing every border. The Wa are advancing from the north, seizing villages that have been under his control for a decade. The Thai military has finally barricaded the southern routes his smugglers depend on. The DEA is hunting his remaining brokers across 3 continents. His own health is failing. Decades of jungle living, stress, and chain smoking have taken their toll on his 61-year-old body. Intelligence analysts predict an imminent collapse, and the DEA prepares for what they call the endgame scenario, a final siege of Ho Mong that will end with Khun Sa either dead in a firefight or dragged out in chains for extradition. Everyone expects a Scarface ending, the aging drug lord surrounded by burning product and dead bodyguards going down in a blaze of gunfire, refusing to surrender. But they're about to learn that Khun Sa never stopped thinking 3 moves ahead. January 5th, 1996. The world receives news that makes no sense at all. The Burmese military junta issues a calm press release. Khun Sa has surrendered. Not to the Americans, the Thai authorities, or the Wawa, but to the Burmese government itself. The same government that imprisoned him in 1969, the same government he's been fighting for 2 decades. The same government that branded him a person to be hanged. There was no battle, siege, or dramatic last stand. Khun Sa walked into a Burmese army camp, shook hands with the generals, and negotiated his own retirement. The terms are so cynical, they almost defy belief. He disbands the Mongai army and officially exits the drug trade. In exchange, Burma guarantees he will never under any circumstances be extradited to the United States or any other country. He keeps his fortune. Hundreds of millions of dollars accumulated over 3 decades of drug trafficking, and he gets to live freely within Burma's borders for the rest of his natural life. The United States demands extradition immediately. They cite the 1989 New York indictment. They invoke international law, diplomatic pressure, and every tool at their disposal. Burma's response is simple and final. No extradition treaty exists between the 2 countries, and none will be negotiated. After years of American sanctions, criticism of human rights abuses, and support for pro-democracy movements, Rangoon has no incentive to accommodate Washington on anything. Sa has found the one jurisdiction on Earth where American legal power cannot follow, inside a government that views the United States as an adversary rather than a partner. He relocates to a villa in Yangon, the Burmese capital. The property is spacious and comfortable with gardens and round-the-clock security personnel. Over the following years, he reinvents himself one final time. He invests his drug fortune into legitimate Yangon real estate during a period of rapid urban development. He operates a bus transportation company with routes across the country. He runs a ruby mining operation in Burma's gem-rich regions. When journalists occasionally gain access for interviews, he describes himself as a humble real estate agent now and reminisces about his years as a revolutionary. The transformation is complete. Warlord to prisoner to revolutionary to drug emperor to retired entrepreneur, each identity adopted when useful, discarded when necessary. The DEA keeps his indictment active for the next 11 years. They continue pressuring regional governments to freeze his assets. They file diplomatic protests annually. The efforts produce nothing actionable. Khun Sa remains in Yangon, protected by a government that has no reason to surrender him and every reason to keep him comfortable and quiet. He dies on October 26, 2007 of natural causes at age 73. He never appears in an American courtroom, never sees the inside of a US prison. The Burmese government provides him a formal burial with appropriate honors, but Khun Sa didn't operate in isolation. The Golden Triangle drug trade was entangled with Cold War intelligence operations in ways that remain partially classified to this day. CIA aircraft moving through the region protected smuggling routes that served multiple purposes, drug profits that funded covert wars across Southeast Asia. If you want to understand how American intelligence became intertwined with the international narcotics network, and why figures like Khun Sa could operate for decades in the shadow of that relationship, watch our video on the CIA and global drug trafficking. The full picture changes how you understand everything that happened in those jungles.